I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is UN Insider.
Coming up.
We work with the organizers to make the events run smoothly.
From the biggest diplomatic gathering of the year to the everyday issues impacting our world.
The facts around inequalities, the facts around climate change, what's happening in wars, and also the facts around the solutions.
A behind-the-scenes look at life inside the UN.
We have 6 language sections at the interpretation service.
With some of the people who make it all work.
The United Nations is the largest multilateral international organization in the world. Every week, we give you a glimpse of its far-reaching work. So we wanted to give you an inside look at some of the operations at the UN that extend beyond what happens inside the General Assembly or the Security Council. Let's begin with a little history lesson. Gerald Tan takes us back to the organization's founding.
Welcome to the permanent headquarters of the United Nations, a symbol of unity and a beacon of hope the world over. While the UN has been around for most of our lifetimes, the organization emerged only after the Second World War. It was April 1945. Representatives from 50 countries gathered in San Francisco to draw up the United Nations Charter.
The organization is now convened.
The US President at the time, Harry S. Truman, addressed the conference from the White House.
If we do not want to die together in war, we must learn to live together in peace.
For 2 months, the delegates hammered out a draft and eventually signed a charter to create the international body called the United Nations. United Nations Day marks the birthday of the UN on October 24th, 1945, and it's grown by quite a bit since then. From the original 51 founding members, the UN today has 193 member states, each with a seat in General Assembly, each with 1 equal vote in policy making. As the challenges facing humanity have grown, so too has the United Nations. The myriad funds, programs, specialized agencies, and other organizations within the UN system all work towards a common mission: to promote peace, dignity, and equality on a healthy planet. Although the UN has had to evolve over the years and adapt to a rapidly changing world, one thing remains the same. It is still a place where all nations can come together to discuss common problems and find shared solutions that benefit everyone. Gerald Tan, CGTN, at the United Nations headquarters in New York.
Every September, UN headquarters welcomes world leaders to kick off a new session of the General Assembly. It requires a massive amount of coordination, from security to credentialing members of the media and helping delegations navigate the halls of the UN. We got a look behind the scenes at preparations for UNGA 79.
Yes, which delegation? What is it about?
For us here at the Protocol Service, it's about being prepared.
You can tell me that she's God, but we need credentials. Yes.
We are your go-to resource if you have any protocol or event management question. Every year in September, our office is taking care of the preparations of the high-level week, where heads of state, government, and also ministers from all over the world come here to the UN to deliver their address to the people of the world. We work with the delegations and with the organizers of the substantive offices to make the events run smoothly as possible.
First of all, welcome. Thank you very much for coming. We're going to do this walkthrough so that you can see all the potential places where your head of delegation may be visiting, both for Summit in the future and the General Assembly. So right now we're here in the delegates' entrance, which we're all very familiar with. We'll have a line of protocol officers here. They will greet the head of delegation. They will escort them up the escalators.
We've had walkthroughs for delegations to understand better where the heads of state and government are going and what restrictions we have.
Only The president will go through those doors escorted by protocol and security. Everybody else from the delegation will go in there if they have the gold card, the gold access card. If you only have the blue access card, you have to wait here in this area until the head of state returns or until the meeting ends.
We try to do as many things as we can already this week before then we go live next week. We have only 11 protocol staff here in the core team, but now today we have received 19 protocol officers from all over the world.
Welcome and welcome back.
Patrick, we have about 400.
We are registering delegates.
We get it done today by the end of...
My colleagues as of Friday had already registered 8,000 delegates.
These are the list that needs to be cross-checked.
I think what unites all of us is that we love our job. We love working for the United Nations. We love working with delegations. You work on something like this high-level week, and then you see the event actually taking place, and there were no major hiccups. That in itself is something that's very gratifying.
So anyway, you move at the United Nations, during the high-level week, you need all these tickets, because without this, they can't go to the GA home. They can come to the UN.
You have to be meticulous with details, but at the other hand, you have to be super flexible and kind of, a person that gets the job done.
This one is missing one goal. Can you count 196 only?
The week itself is going to be long hours for everybody, a lot of being on your feet, a lot of standing, and you will see us at the end of the week. We will not quite look as fresh as we do at the moment, but I think we're all excited, and we're all looking forward to high-level week.
Coming up.
We're humans relaying one of the most human and humane of messages to the world.
UN Insider.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Communication is at the heart of any diplomatic effort. Here at the UN, one particular team has a specialized function. They are seldom seen but often heard in one of the UN's 6 official languages.
Iraq
welcomes the report of the International Atomic Energy Agency 2023, and we express our appreciation to the... Sometimes a speaker is going really fast, and they're going so fast that you have a hard time understanding what they're saying, not to mention process it. You start out fresh on Monday, and by the time Thursday rolls in, you're thinking, can I still do this? How many cups of coffee do I need to get through this meeting?
Mr. President, the nuclear war should never be fought, as it can never be won.
Las armas nucleares, porque una guerra nuclear nunca debe librarse.
Dans le cadre du régime actuel de non-prolifération nucléaire, nous soutenons...
Никогда не должны вновь испытываться. Господин председатель.
We have 6 language sections at the interpretation service, each for one of the UN official languages.
The catastrophic consequences of nuclear warfare should never be experienced again. In this regard, Zimbabwe applauds the...
I think that an important part of diplomacy is communication, and where the role of UN interpreters come in there is we facilitate it. UN headquarters here, we're definitely over 120 interpreters. So you see they're all up on the right with the Arabic instead of on the left with the European languages. As an interpreter, you have to remain informed. Sometimes when countries' positions change, their language changes. And you have to be aware of the nuances of the language. Do they say Israel or do they say the Zionist entity? You have to be careful. Do they say East Jerusalem or Al-Quds? All of these are not just linguistic expressions, they are a reflection of a policy, of a position. During my career, I've had the privilege of interpreting testimonies by people who I think are witnesses to history.
We will not leave. We will not leave. We will not leave.
The most recent example was the speech by the Palestinian president at the General Assembly.
Palestine is our homeland. It is the land of our fathers, our grandfathers. It will remain ours.
I thought it was powerful, it was historically important. Interpretation is about the message. It's about relaying the message. It may not mean using the same exact words, but it means relaying the person's register, the person's feeling.
What have you guys been doing?
I was in that meeting last week. I've cried when the speaker was crying. You know, if the speaker gets emotional, I have choked up, and I think a lot of us in the past year have choked up interpreting some pretty difficult meetings. It's not unprofessional, it's fine. We're humans relaying one of the most human and humane of messages to the world.
With 4 main offices and operations in 193 member states around the world, the United Nations deals with a long list of issues. So how does the UN share news about all the work it's doing all over the globe? Melissa Fleming helps inform the world about the UN. She's the Undersecretary General for Global Communication and hosts of the award-winning UN podcast, Awake at Night. Undersecretary General Fleming, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Elaine.
How is the United Nations using its communication platforms to promote awareness and action towards achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, we're using them in multiple ways. I mean, first, just to get out the facts, the facts around inequalities, the facts around climate change, what's happening in wars, and also the facts around the solutions. But just putting out the facts, if you're trying to move hearts and minds, isn't quite enough. So we're deploying a lot of storytelling, content, campaign material to reach people in ways that we hope will get them to care, but also get them to act. So it's a challenge in today's world where people are bombarded with all kinds of information and disinformation too. So trying to get into those spaces with authoritative information, but also the types of content that is going to move people into realizing that the world is in trouble, but they can also join forces with us to help us fix it.
Because the SDGs have been around for quite some time. I mean, it's not you were just over 5 years into reaching 2030. So have you had to change the way and evolve the way you communicate the information around them?
Yeah, I mean, I still think there's a lot of educating to do around the SDGs and what each goal represents. I mean, they're very bold visions, no hunger, for example, quality education for all. What does that mean? And to really describe the kinds of programs that are happening all over the world. UN country offices in virtually every developing country, in every fragile country, even middle-income country around the world, working with governments, working with civil society to help them build plans to, lift their countries according to the Sustainable Development Goal model. And they've, then to help try to attract the kind of investment and finance that is needed. So it's, on one hand, these are, very aspirational goals, and we say that we've only reached 17% of them, and we only have 6 years to go. We can say all of that, but we also need to, describe how we're making progress. What are examples of solutions that have really taken off in some countries? Where have actually the solutions bubbled up from the hyper-local level or the local level, and can we tell the world about those stories so others can perhaps learn from them?
What would you say the international media's role is in helping the United Nations get that information out correctly to its populations around the world?
Huge role, and that's one of the things that's reflected very prominently in our UN global principles. Our stakeholders were telling us this around the world. We were seeing that where public interest media has declined, because actually in the social media era, some of the public interest media, their business models have collapsed, and they're really, really struggling. And this has created an imbalance. A healthy information ecosystem has public interest media, independent, free media at its heart. A place where the public can turn to get authoritative, trusted information to guide them. And so we are promoting this pillar of having a strong media at its center. We're promoting media development, more investment in media as a development goal.
We hear about AI all the time. It's everywhere now, and there's always a certain fear of the unknown. Have you thought about if and how you would use AI in your global communications?
There's a lot of excitement around the UN about AI. There's a lot of excitement in people at WHO, people at ITU, people involved in education. They really believe that these applications can help, particularly in the developing world, can help advance the SDGs and some of our efforts. So that's great. On communications, we are looking at how we can use AI to help become maybe more multilingual in the way our capabilities of communicating with more people around the world. Just like journalists, maybe using it to help us get ideas and creative ideas for storytelling. But one thing that we've really discovered is we still need a human hand. The subjects that we deal with are so sensitive. I have to say that we're spending a lot of time warning about the dangers of AI in the dimensions of disinformation, deep fakes. So we're trying to embrace the potential advantages of AI while warning against the dark side. There is a recognition among all member states that there needs to be a global, at least not necessarily regulation, but certainly governance, kind of like we have for climate change, an IPCC-like body for AI, so that everyone has access to the research, the developments, so that there's transparency, and then perhaps some recommendations for guardrails.
Coming back to what we were discussing at the beginning of our interview, we talked about trust and mistrust, and there's a lot of mistrust around the media in general. A lot of people don't have a favorable opinion of some media. And you mentioned there's a little bit of that around the UN as well. So how do you come around regaining trust of people around the world?
Yeah, well, it depends on which population you survey, and sometimes there are surveys about trust in the UN, and it really does vary country by country. I think the best defense is offense. Offense in terms of just being open, being communicative, having effective strategic communications, engaging with the media, inviting people in to the UN, giving talks, opening the place up in ways that are accessible in the sense of don't just assume that if you broadcast something from UN headquarters in New York that people around the world are going to hear it. We have the benefit of having UN information centers in 59 countries around the world, and then in the countries where we don't have these UN information centers, we have communication officers, and so we deliver kind of our central campaigns, but we say, adapt them into your languages, into your contexts, find your own partners and influencers, and see how you can make the UN themes relevant to your population, speaking in the languages that you speak.
Undersecretary General Melissa Fleming, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Coming up.
The visitors should know lots of the details that went into the creation of this architectural masterpiece.
UN Insider.
Introducing CGTN Now. Find award-winning documentaries and exclusive content from around the world. Latin America like you've never seen. Breakthrough films shining a light on important stories. In-depth discussions with fascinating people. Giving you new perspective on topics that matter. You also get live round-the-clock international news and headlines and so much more. Original content from CGTN's Global Bureau. Download the CGTN Now app and find the global perspective you've been missing. Available on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire. Or go to cgtnnow.com on your tablet or mobile device. CGTN Now. See the difference.
The United Nations is a one-of-a-kind institution, and it is headquartered in a one-of-a-kind building. An exhibit tells the story of how this groundbreaking landmark came to be through photos and records that date back nearly 8 decades.
The exhibition, A Workshop for Peace, tells the story of how the UN headquarters was designed and built and preserved. We felt that, the visitors should know lots of the details that went into the creation of this architectural masterpiece. It was a very successful project and a very successful collaboration between, great architects from 10 different countries. One, Liu Zizhong from China, Le Corbusier from France, Oscar Niemeyer from Brazil. Those were very, very bright minds, and they did what the United Nations is trying to do every day. They came together, they had a task, and they brought the best ideas to that task, and they created a new, very innovative headquarters for this new organization, United Nations. Our Secretariat building, the high-rise, is the prototype of the modern high-rise building. It was the first building with this kind of a glass facade. The General Assembly building, the conference building, is the prototype of the modern conference center and convention center with big halls that were designed for simultaneous interpretation, for example, for TV, for recording everything. The UN headquarters is much smaller than most people probably think it is. A structure that leads people together. If you are a diplomat, if you are a delegate, you cannot avoid constantly meeting and bumping into delegates from other countries. The UN headquarters needed to be renovated because whether it's a one-family home that you may own or a big headquarters building, The building systems are usually designed only to really work well for 30 or 40 years. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning, all these things. The facade, the glass facade of the Secretariat building had big problems. In a storm, we could have lost some parts of our facade. In 2008, we began the renovation, and it turned out to be a $2.15 billion project, paid for by our member states. We were only 10% over budget. We completed in 2016, and we were only half a year over our completion date. So for a construction or renovation project of such a magnitude, it was a very successful project. Our headquarters building was and still is very innovative, and we are very proud that we are able to preserve it and let it be a symbol of what this organization stands for many, many years to come.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is a special edition of UN Insider.
UN Insider serves as an important window for the global audience to better understand multilateral diplomacy.
It's very important for the media to cover the United Nations, to seek to understand and tell the story in ways that the average person in the street can understand.
I think it's very important that the media should contribute to conveying important messages about the reality of today's challenges.
UN Insider has come to the UN, and we at the UN are so grateful to have it here. It is the only dedicated TV program to what is happening in the UN, and it is reaching so many people with, as it says in its title, inside the UN stories.
Media plays an important role in providing objective information across the world.
We think that media has a strong power of uplifting, what we are trying to convey as messages as developing countries.
We need the mobilization of all peoples, of whole government and whole of society, and media can help us to be informed so that we also can make our part.
I think the media is fundamental to enable citizens across the world, first of all, to understand what is the rationale of having the United Nations. It's not that there is one place on planet Earth that will tell the rest of the world what to do. It is a much more complex story.